right. So good to be together. Good to be with you, Kelly.
Thank you for coming. This
Thanks
is so
for
fun.
having me in this place with you. This is always a spectacular space to share energy and such a fun time to be with your community. Hello, Heal community.
Yes. So I'm just trying to get the video here. Correct.
We are cruising through the technical challenges of being in community in the 21st century here.
That's right.
So thank you all for your time. It's always an honor to share time and space with human beings. Life is full. I hope that we can say that life is full and not necessarily busy. And so that we are aligned with the reality that space-time is a human concept and the time continuum is plentiful and we can live in abundance in the most wild of times.
Yes, I'm still learning. I love your blog. Last week, I think, was like, we are infinite beings in a finite moment. That's been my mantra as busyness is trying to take over again.
It's true. It's true. As we come cruising out of this last 2-year kind of hibernation period of metamorphosis, I think everybody's feeling the pressure of perhaps a season past that we forgot about as to how the world loves to keep us on our heels and in a distracted state so that we can be easily programmed. So here's to taking a deep breath that we should all do together.
Yes.
Slow it down a little bit, everybody, and wherever you are and whatever's brought you to this moment, to be with Kelly and I and to be with you and yourself and your soul. We'll breathe into that for a moment in silence there. One more deep breath in and out. And that is something you've never heard on CNN or Fox News or anything else, is a moment of silence. So coming to you with a different energy, with the excitement of being together. And I think that's hopefully a theme for 22 as we come back out of isolation and social abnormalities, that we remember to be connected to not just our friends and family, but new community. How can we reach out to one another and really find a new pace with human connection, and hopefully more and more do that in natural settings so that we're breathing in that Mother Nature that has been so gracious to envision the emergence of the mammals and ultimately the humans that are here humbly for the last few 100,000 years to participate in this beauty. So I want to just step back, and this energy in this room is always you right on that moment of challenging us with great questions when we're on your podcast and everything else. But I want to flip that table for just a second and give you the opportunity to reflect a little bit on your journey, because my gosh, has it been a wild and crazy few years for you on probably all quantum levels. But give us a sense of, what drew you to create Heal, because it's obviously become the epicenter of this amazing community. And so I'm always curious to know what those sparks were and what the doors that were closed and open and everything else that led you on this path.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Again, one more technical thing that this is my bad, because it just told me my internet's unstable. So bear with me for 1 second before I dive in. I'm going to switch over here and I'm going to turn the Wi-Fi off. So we are now, we may have a little blip for a moment, and then we are hardwired.
Hardwired.
Yay. All right. So I always wish this was an easy answer, but I'll try to keep it short because there's so much to speak about today. But honestly, it was just a calling. It was one of those things where community, I started to pay attention, and it was a lot of Michael Beckwith's teaching when I started going to Agape, and I was just like very, just in a seeking phase of my life, which is pretty much constant now. But it was like, I really dove in, and I found this beautiful community of Agape that was basically a microcosm. I love how we talk about micro, macro. And it was a microcosm of the globe. I mean, it was people of every color, height, economic background, language, culture, dress, it was just really beautiful. And the energy was so positive. And he taught me to pay attention to the nudges, the callings in your heart. And I started to pay attention. I've been an actor my whole life. And I started to pay attention that when I talked about auditioning or booking a job, yeah, it was okay. It was just like average. But when I talked about like human potential and manifesting and energy and healing ability and miraculous healing stories, I just lit up. And it was like almost like I was my own generator of energy. And once he made me aware of that, I was like, oh, that's your body is like a tuning fork, and that it tells you what you should be doing. It clues you in on your purpose. So I just started paying attention to that and diving, one thing led to the other. And I remember reading The Biology of Belief, like on some workout machine at the Equinox in Westwood. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're not victims of our genes. Everybody needs to know this, And around the same time, I was listening to a lot of law of attraction stuff and just really consciously practicing gratitude and journaling. And I noticed so many profound changes in my life. And so my friends and family were like, what are you doing? How are you so healthy? How are you manifesting all these great things? And so ultimately I just wanted to put all the teachers that I'd come across my path. It's interesting that it ended up on healing potential. But basically I'm just so fascinated with what we've been given, the intelligence of the human body, the interconnectedness and intelligence of nature and the cosmos and the divine. And I wanted to just kind of share what had empowered me.
Extraordinary. I mean, what you just struck on there has really been a lot of the themes for my last year as we start to think about the senses and what is it to sense the world around us. And the Course in Miracles has this phenomenal description that the human senses were actually designed to create the belief of separateness. I think that's profound and interesting. And what you're talking about is something deeper than the five senses. You're going beyond vision, scent, all these distracting, neurologic systems that our brain seems to be so wired for. And you're starting to feel into something radically different, something much deeper in your intrinsic wiring that you were sensing into. And so when you were starting to lean into that and feel that magnetic capacity and that, I loved what you said, something along the lines, I became my own generative force. That really would put every medical community out of business instantly. If we could all just tap into that generative force within us and come into that alignment. And so what does that feel like in your body physically? If it's not your five senses that are engaged, help us tap into that sense.
Yeah, it feels like it's, as you talk about this, I'll share a personal story, but it feels like lightness, like, as opposed to heaviness. And, when you're stressed, your shoulders are forward and your chest is constricted. And when you feel like coherence and in full alignment with what you're here to do and your gifts and expression, you feel expansive, light, and energized. And it's almost like, for lack of a better word, it's like you're high. So you just want, it's like a natural ecstasy, for all those who know about street drugs, but it's like, and they're doing it for therapies now, MDMA, because it gives you this, or even psychedelics, like this connected feeling. And I feel like that's our true nature. And whether it's senses and just the way the world's evolved, we have this illusion of separation that takes us out of that. But I remember speaking around the same time, I was speaking to my brother on the phone, and he met his now wife, and he was talking to me about her, and it was that same feeling. So it's like you're in love, but he was specifically in love with his experience, that this woman who's his wife, and they're so in love, and he was just like floating and buoyant, and so he could talk for hours about it and energized. I could just picture him like 2 feet off the ground floating. And that's the feeling. It's like you're so in love and connected with life and everything, and nothing it would take something very massive to like take you out of that state when you're that aligned.
What does it feel like to be in connection with somebody when you're in that space? Like when you're engaging with a loved one or community or whatnot? Is there a sense of what that feels like?
I mean, same to me. I just get overwhelmed with like enthusiasm, in Theos, I guess.
I feel that from you.
It's like, I'm just so enthusiastic. Do you? I'm like, is it overwhelming?
Vibrating. And that is that power of attraction that you were talking about. I think you start vibrating at this, highest state of self. And one of the things that we've come to in a clinic over the last 12 years that I've been honored to be kind of a part of as I launched out of the university setting and started, it was originally called Revolution Health Center. We started out in rural Virginia, like impoverished area, food desert, as well as, you know, economically impoverished. And the magnetic event that happened there over those first couple of years was so phenomenal. And it had a lot to do with that, just so much excitement of the individuals that were in the clinic, that we were actually working together, that we had found each other, you know. So you have these disparate things, emotion code therapists and chemotherapy doctor, and, you know, acupuncture and a chemotherapy doctor. I was always like the weird one in the group, I felt like. And slowly they wore down my, you know, rough edges of programming and helped welcome me into this much bigger, expanded world of who I could be as a healer. And that journey was really created, I think, out of the passion that you're talking about. Is there are many of these practitioners that already come into that alignment. And I was in the very early phases of stepping out of a very inside the box 17 years of academia, very shut down, very depressed, and I knew I needed to get out of that system, didn't know how to, took the first step. And I love it that the universe is so graceful in that before we can find our passion and wake up to our soul, if we just are willing to take that terrifying first step of surrender, the universe shows up with people like that state of being that you're talking about. And the acceleration of healing that happened in those years for me was so exciting. Every week, one of my chief of esoteric sciences now, his name's William Vitalis, he would come in on Wednesdays and he'd be there all day doing energy medicine. I'd be there for 5-6 days a week seeing patients, and I always look forward to Wednesdays because I knew he would be there and I knew he would be vibing. And his little office was no bigger than a closet, no windows. And we had one little massage table in there, and I could squeeze in next to him. We would stand next to this massage table and a patient on there, and we would just pour our hearts out and open up space for that patient to pour their hearts out. By the end of the day, you're just so vibrating because people are showing up in humility and a sense of connectivity. And that beautiful scripture where two or more are gathered in my name. And the name, of course, is I am. So what does that really mean? If two or more are gathered in that sense of presence, are you being instead of doing? Are you being here right now? And I'm starting to really enjoy the realization that I've always done my highest work when I'm not trying to think about it and not trying to figure out the solution for my patients. I just show up. And when I show up, I get to participate and be witness to that other person being drawn into that magnetic possibility that they could just show up and surrender the fear, surrender the guilt, and do their thing. And I get that echo through all of your podcasts and everything else, is you are finding guests, not just on the film, but also in the podcast, that have at moments liberated themselves of the fear and guilt, and they rose for a moment. And when they rose, they immediately collected, you know, radical community around them. And then Heal became that. Heal is this magnetic community that you've created by lifting yourself up ultimately. And I love that because there's a humility in you that's always like, well, it's all of those people and it was the healers and the doctors, but ultimately you were the light that was lifted up there and you were the one vibrating. It was your passion of listening to these other individuals that excite you. That was really the vibration that your community was responding to. So honor you as the crystalline structure that was raised up there.
Thank you.
And I would love to hear a little bit more about what you've seen that community do outside of your journey and how it became almost a force to be reckoned with outside of yourself.
Yeah. You mean the Heal community? And
Yeah.
I mean, it's just Adam, my producing partner, is here, and we're just so amazed at the influx, and it's, you know, been kind of constant, and there's these new waves and it's almost like ripple effects, and we couldn't be, you know, the first wave was enough to like make everything worth it. You know, everybody says if I could just help one person, you know, and the amount of people that share Heal as a tool, you know, even like very conventional in the system, because they're like, I don't have time. I'm a, you know, restricted by the system I'm in, but I know that there's an element that can help the person. And so they share Heal as a tool. And that to me is just like, I'm just so humbled to have created. And like you said, I'm just the curator that brought these experts together. People ask me to speak and I'm like, I'm not the expert, talk to these guys, but I'm passionate about it, but I would never call myself an expert. So it's just really the stories. It's basically just about empowering people to go down their own path, to tune into their resonance and what their body and purpose is telling them, and soul and spirit. So it's very cool to have contributed in that way.
It's beautiful. Each of you listening right now, I think you've witnessed something of Kelly over the years, or you've witnessed something of me, or whatever it is. And there's a tendency for us to apply old patterns of thinking, I think, around this movement of what has been kind of termed human consciousness, where we tend to put somebody on a pedestal and we tend to go after that person, and we eclipse the real thing that we're feeling for or wanting. We eclipse it with a personality or a persona. And I think both Kelly and I, as well as many of the people that have been on the Heal film and podcast, have realized at some point in their journey that they need to step out of the way as far as a persona and let something brighter come through. And for each of you, I would admonish you to help anybody that you've really become devoted to listening to in their content, and whether it be in podcasts or films or whatever it is, for a moment, do them a favor, do us a favor, do everybody a favor that's involved in these large productions, of looking past the individuals and look through that towards the energy that you're really focused on, and realize you're responding, everything in you that you're feeling like this is truth, this person is speaking truth. It's actually you knowing truth. You know truth, and you're feeling the thing that Kelly was talking about a bit ago, with that inner vibration, that heightening of experience, that sense of glow, that sense of expansion, that the heart opens instead of collapses. That whole motion that you're feeling is not because of an individual saying the words that you're listening to. It's because the space between those words are now vibrating with something that you remember as truth. And so this gives us permission to not be perfect, and to come in, with busy, distracted senses, sit with you for a few minutes and open up a space that is truth, that is vibrating for your recognition, for your remembrance, and not because either of us are clever, or either of us read more or studied longer at school. We're simply holding space together. And that's where the community piece really comes in phenomenally. So I love that your path from actor, which of course is like maybe the penultimate version of somebody put on a pedestal, and people make your persona the energy that they're feeling.
I think that was what drives a lot of us, not all of us, but like wanting to be adored and loved, to fill some hole of some negative, disempowering belief system. So that's maybe different varying degrees of motivation, but it's so great what you just said, because I just want to encourage everybody, once you tune into what lights you up inside and gives you that energetic and enthusiasm that I'm talking about, and generates your own energy, it's like, follow that and trust that whether it's Zach or Kelly or, Bruce Lipton or Marianne Williamson or whoever it is that you're putting on a pedestal, they were sitting in you, like where you are at some point in their life, where they didn't know how they were going to do it or what they were going to do, but they took that leap, like you said, and followed that calling or urge, that energy, and found themselves, when you opened, they found themselves in a community that supported them, and a magnetic field that supported them, and then attracted the next, step. And it just unfolds that way. So keep, trying to tune into that lights you up.
Yeah. And for many of us, I think if you're like me, I didn't know where to begin when I was starting to realize that academia was collapsing. It was 2008 to 2010. We were in a huge recession. NIH was losing funding. University of Virginia, where I was at, lost funding. And so we were just like in this free fall of, career stability or whatever it was. And that was happening on top of what had become like this collapse of self over that 17 years of academia, where I felt unseen, unheard, unknown. I didn't know myself, and I kind of knew that. And I had this deep, sorrow for, why did I show up in this life? Maybe it's all pointless because I can't feel anything. When you become depressed, you become so numbed out to the experience of being alive. Your senses are definitely dulled on a lot of levels, other than that intense sense of agony within you that you are on the wrong path, that this isn't you, that people don't know you, and the feedback you're getting from the universe, from the people around you, whatnot, seems to be discordant with how you're showing up as desperate times. And I think there are 300 million new households that have been thrust into that over this poverty event that we've created out of what has been termed a pandemic of a virus. We've created a pandemic of poverty. We've created a pandemic of substance abuse. We've created a pandemic of domestic violence, sexual abuse. But in the midst of that, in this intense fragility of human society, there has been this rapid rise of awareness that we have brought ourselves to this as a humanity because we were misaligned. We were misaligned with our soul. Purpose perhaps is showing up as extraordinary light beings that are animating these human bodies. And we were misaligned with one another. We'd been given a societal structure that put us in competition with one another instead of in synergy with one another. We'd given a model of competition rather than flow. And so I'm excited to see that despite the obvious collapse of, an empire that's struggling to keep its financial stability up, and it's printing money like crazy, and it's rushing around the world doing all kinds of stopgaps. Despite all of that, you can start to feel this cohesion starting to happen in the fabric of the world. And there's this sense of, wait, I can feel something new. I can feel this quickening, if you will, of the human spirit. And it is rearranging everything. And I think we have to be okay with that. And that's where I had to be, 12 years ago when I left the university. I didn't have a vision of what was next. And so I think the magic comes when you start to open up the willingness to be given a vision. We've been so emphasized this whole vision board thing, and we've got our Pinterest boards and we're doing our thing. And it was more of a thing 5 years ago, I think, perhaps, than today. But I think everybody and their mother was told they had to have a vision board if they expected to be successful 5 years ago. You had to
everybody had Oprah on there. Let's not
Oprah
lie.
was there.
Yeah.
And so we had this like compulsion to find the vision, to create hold the insights. And I think what happened to me, just because I didn't even have anybody around me that would have told me to have a vision board, would have known what those words meant if somebody had said that in 2010 to me, there's an opportunity for us to ask something bigger than the human mind for the vision of where we are supposed to be. And that's my excitement when I start to see, these communities coming around, whether it be the HEAL community or the group that we've been forming is called Journey of Intrinsic Health, where we're bringing together a community around this idea that there is intrinsic healing, as in your case, or there's this intrinsic pathway of knowingness, how to align yourself within. And when you bring groups together, even if it's you and a coach, or you and a Facebook group, or whatever you're engaged with, there's an opportunity for you to shake off your human mind when it's like, well, I don't know what my vision is, or maybe this is my vision board. I'm really frustrated. It's not coming to be. I've done 12 years of vision boarding and nothing is coming to fruition. It seems worse every year, not closer every year. It may be that we're asking the wrong part of our mind as to where we're heading. And so I'd be very interested in your reactions, Kelly, but if we opened up to the possibility that I am state, where we kind of see, all of scripture from all different religious backgrounds and everything else, emphasizing it's in that moment of now, that moment of being rather than doing, where we get to listen into ourselves at this deep, deep level, that we start to have the opportunity to listen to the God within us, the I am, the connection to source, all of these, words that might have baggage for you, whatever. Find the stillness within, if nothing else, and ask there, what is the vision of my soul? Not the human mind, but what is the vision of my soul? Why did I show up right now? And where do we see that going? You've got an interview, Bruce Lipton, I feel like he's one of the best people speaking about that kind of stuff 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so how does all that resonate?
Amazing. There's so many thoughts coming up about community. Like you said, we just, in contrast to the lockdown and isolation, and we all know that isolation leads to depression and disease and all sorts of things. And now we're at a time when people are finding their community, and it's almost like that field when, where two or more are gathered, when they share the same values and the same vibration, you're creating, it's that intrinsic healing that happens when you're in community. You can be supported to heal yourself. And then as such, that magnetic field gets powerful. And then in that way, communities can shift and heal societies.
Mm-hmm.
So I just love for you to expand on your vision of the micro macro, because we're all these, it's just like how if you go into the cellular level or the atomic level, molecular level, it's all just nature repeating itself in these fractals, and we're like little, this is how, even as a child. And I thought it was because I watched the movie Inner Space. Did you remember that movie?
Love that movie.
But it was more like, oh my gosh, we're like little cells moving around, or we're like the little bacteria on the cell that's the earth. There's just this like macro micro thing that I'm always thinking about. So much can happen when cells are in community, and so I think the time is now and it does feel like a quickening. For me, it feels like a very uncomfortable pressure, because I see what I don't want happening. And there's just like it just feels like it's definitely like that time in the caterpillar where the old caterpillar cells, it's like dark and gooey and it's breaking down, but then like the butterfly cells are emerging, and we're in that transition, which is so just confusing and icky and pressure. But like, as long as those butterfly cells keep joining together and strengthening that momentum forward, then boom, the butterfly happens.
Amazing. What a great description. I think that is one of the important things that we just give ourselves permission of in this chapter. There's been this tendency towards this extreme polarization in society over these last few years, certainly decades, but accelerating these last few years, and then really accelerating, obviously, over the course of this isolation event of the pandemic. And the first thing that caterpillar does is kind of shed the head of the caterpillar before it goes into the cocoon. And I love that, like the idea of lose your brain on this one, shed that thing, because it's so prone and it's been only really taught to figure itself out by making judgments. And it's through these snap judgments that we look out and we say, well, we're not that, and we define ourselves by a bunch of nots or antis. And we start to know nothing within ourselves. We don't know who we are because we've only reacted to the outside stimuli to say, well, we've made judgments on all those things and we're none of those things because those people are stupid, or that person is lying, or that group of people are trying to kill other people. We make all these assumptions and judgments, and we're so easily programmed by external inputs when we're in that space of not coming from within to say, I am. And I am here, and I am light, and I am love, and I can step forward. And then life takes on a whole different matrix. And so we have to give ourselves permission for the polarization. We have to give ourselves permission for the missteps in the past, because it was the goo. It was, and it's no wonder we got more messy, not cleaner, because we had to all fall apart. We had that whole system had to collapse. And it doesn't matter if we're thinking of systems of education, which have obviously collapsed as kids had to go remote and do Zoom classes. And my daughter's in performing arts up in New York, and she was so lucky to graduate in her university program 2 days before New York locked down. Suddenly actors were trying to learn how to act on Zoom. Like I was just like, this is insanity. Wow. It's impossible that we did this. But so we saw the education system fail. We saw transportation and energy sectors fail. We saw supply chains for food fail. And so we've gotten to see the fragility of an old system. And hallelujah that it's in the goo of collapse in that moment.
I think it's so interesting what you said, that the caterpillar loses its head and then it films it, or develops the chrysalis and goes within, and darkness, and that's the beginning. And so like, that's why meditation for me, it's like you lose your head, or not watching the news, just taking out the outside stimulus, connecting with nature, turning within, getting quiet, just that's reconnecting with yourself so that you can show up as yourself and connect and find your community. So lose your head.
Lose
as much as you can.
Lose that mind somewhere out there. It's exciting to find the silence in there. And I think if it sounds weird to lose the head, or how do you meditate, it's as simple as silence. And so for me, nature provides those moments. I'm not a great meditator. If you just say, Zach, shut down your mind, that takes me quite a long time. But if you say, Zach, pay attention to what it sounds like to be in the woods alone, I can take myself there in a busy airport or whatever it is. Zach, what does it sound like on the high desert plains outside of Sedona, outside of the Navajo Nation? What does that sound like there? And it's pin drop silent out there in the desert. Interestingly, I think the most silence is and if you've experienced anything like that, then let nature show you what the beauty looks like in the silence. And that can maybe be an entry point for you to shut down all those external stimuli of the news and the COVID numbers or whatever's been occupying much of your attention. Unplug, find nature's stimulus for silence. One of the meditations that I really love doing recently is teaching men how to bring their cells into complete stillness when with another individual, whether it be a man or a woman, doesn't matter. But I think women are better at finding that silence in some ways at that cellular level than men, because of some of the hormonal environment of having a male archetype there, some of the neural pathways that develop under high testosterone influence early in life. And all of us, regardless of gender, certainly have a feminine and masculine archetype, a feminine and masculine energy within us that we can tap into at different points. But I think both the combination of that hormonal environment combined with societal programming, men tend to have this frenetic energy underneath the cell surface that's never been given permission to be silent. And so whether this is you listening as somebody who is, under that male identity coming into the world, or if it's somebody who's partnered with somebody who like that, have some grace on yourself, have some grace on your partner, have some grace on the men around you, and invite them into silence. And it might be an interesting focal point, especially if you see them falling into insecurities or abusive behaviors and all of that, to create an invitation into silence instead of meeting them at the combat, meeting them on the field. And we should need to do this for ourselves, because nobody is more destructive to you than your own mind. And so invite yourself into a moment of silence. And for me, nature is a good entry point. But as I go deeper and deeper into that fractal nature you were describing, the galaxies, the picture of being out in dark space and the galactic beauty out there, the supernovas and their 150 million light year diameters and all these crazy numbers out there. Step into that silence. There's no sound in vacuum space, and there's no air to carry a sound wave, let alone an ear to hear it. And so utter silence just outside the veil of our planet for millions and millions of light years, total silence. And so step out there in your mind's eye into the star field, let the galaxies spin around you and experience that, and then try to bring yourselves into complete stillness. And when you achieve that, when you really get good at stillness, you become a perfect antenna. Your body is actually a column of water. 70% by weight is this column of water of your body, and it's held in 70 trillion human cells. There's another about 6 pounds of water that are held by 1.4 quadrillion bacteria. There's another 6 or 8 pounds that are held by 14 quadrillion mitochondria within your cells. So there's all these cellular structures that are holding water in a gel state. It's not a liquid. It looks like jello. And in this gel state, down at the fabric of that gel is a crystalline structure. So you are literally a crystal made from water that vibrates to the vibration of you. Your identity is slightly different than mine, because as the universe bombards you with all of the frequencies that it has at its disposal, the combination of the way in which your DNA uniquely entwines for you within that water structure creates a resonance chamber that's very unique to you. So you're resonating to you. And I love that reality. So as you find your way into stillness, you'll find your way into that crystalline structure. You'll find your way into a resonance state that is you, and that can become your North Star. So if you ever feel like you have no idea where you're going in life, everything seems to be happening to you instead of because of you, you know only how to do, you don't know how to be, let the silence take you into that opportunity to become an antenna. And then trust that the universe will immediately sing a new song across that antenna, and you will hear something that you've never felt before, which is the sound of love for yourself, the sound of love for your soul, that you showed up here to vibrate right now at the tipping point of human history is profound. But you can't do that alone. And as soon as you start resonating, you start to feel that joy rising up, you will quickly default into old programming if there's not somebody else there to reflect it back at you, because you will doubt it. The human mind, the human ego will step right back in and be like, oh, that was just a silly moment. You have all these responsibilities. You have all these things to do. You can't be that simple. You can't just resonate to you. That's so, and the ego is going to sneak in there. But if somebody has seen you go silent and has seen the beauty of a simple smile start to spread across your face with your eyes closed as you listen deep, they're going to tell you how beautiful you are at that moment. They're going to be able to listen with you, perhaps. And so I really encourage you, whether you know Kelly's work or not, dive in on the Heal film. It's available on Netflix, right? So
It was. It jumped over to Amazon Prime.
Now on Amazon Prime.
Thanks.
Heal film on Amazon Prime now, and go through and listen to all of the different voices that are reflected there. These are healers coming from many different backgrounds. These are people that wouldn't consider themselves healers, scientists, and things like this. They're talking about the biology of our intrinsic capacity to heal, our intrinsic journey into health. Listen into that, because it will give you the opportunity in your stillness to find those moments of truth. You will resonate to different things. And again, it's not the individual. It's not that scientist you need to go file. It's the words and the between the words that are carrying a resonance frequency that you're going to spark with. And so if you haven't seen that body of knowledge, it's a great one to dive into. I love the dynamicness of Kelly's podcast. And so she's created a huge data bank of podcasts that lets you listen to long form conversations with some of these individuals and others not in the film, that will get you resonating at this frequency of you. You are a very high frequency potential, but you have been lowered by all of the chemical and kind of toxic electromagnetic and everything else waves that have come in to create static on your own self-identity. And so you can, if you're old enough to, Kelly's not, I'm sure, but if you're old enough to remember the old rabbit ear antennas on the television, you remember how the fuzz would come in and somebody would get up and either first move them, and then we got into the 1980s and we could actually click that little dial and be like, oh, there it is, it's CBS. Yeah. All right. And you'd get that vibe in there. Your rabbit ears are inherently, because you're out here in the world day in and day out, they are picking up the static. They are out of alignment. And in recent months, I have had this extraordinary insight that keeps coming through deeper and deeper within me, that your geometry of your body helps to support the resonance of the water structure within you. So just like the rabbit ears have to be moved to come into the appropriate geometry to receive the signal of CBS, station there, I want you to think about your body as a resonance chamber. And I want you to have incredible respect for the symmetry potential and the alignment within the physical nature, that geometry of your body, and start to tap into the possibility that alignment of your hips, alignment of your knees, alignment of your breath, expansion of the chest, the dropping of the shoulders away from your ears, the opening of that chest and the shoulder blades opening up behind you. Picture wings on the back of your scapula or your shoulder blades. Picture wings there that want to open up. And as those wings open, your chest opens and your fifth chakra opens up. And I've gotten these incredible visions recently where I've realized that the alignment of this whole electrical system that starts up in your pineal gland projects straight down to your pelvis when you're in alignment. when we slump over, when we get that iPhone kind of posture going, when we're on our laptops, we collapse that resonance between our pineal gland and the reflection of it off our pelvis. That would then be kind of this radar dish that would project it back up through our bodies. So your organ systems don't hear you clearly because the antennas are out of alignment. Your antennas have got you in this collapsed state of being. And so open yourself up. And remember, if you feel out of tune, if you feel depressed and you're like, getting pissed off at the world, it's probably because you're looking down at that cell phone. You're looking down into, kind of the morass of stimulus the world wants to put your eyes down here. Look up at the horizon, get your wings to open up, get that opening of the chest, and experience a different resonance immediately. It will change your neurochemistry because you just put into alignment that pineal gland with the pelvis. And then if you stand up and put those feet about shoulder width apart, you can get a reflection back up. And it's very cool that the thorax and your hyoid bone, which floats above your thyroid, focus all of this information right up onto your top of your palate. And so picture your soul projected down on your pelvis, this radar dish-like bone structure, now reflecting it straight back up to a second smaller dish that's built like a ski ramp that goes straight out into the world to speak your truth. That's what it is to be in alignment with your biologic nature. And so your position is critical. And so a lot of what we teach in Journey of Intrinsic Health is how do you bring breath, geometry of your neuromuscular system into alignment so that you become a true projection of who you really are at that soul level. And so that's going to help you kind of get into this resonant state that you can come into community with, because as soon as you're in that resonant state, you know who you are and you're projecting yourself clearly, you're going to get to see it back from the community, and you're going to get to see how beautiful you are. When you're speaking your truth, it's powerful. You feel the vibration. When somebody reflects that beauty back at you, you will weep.
It is so true. And we're going to get to the questions right now, but just to finish that off, this is why I'm so fascinated with the human body. It's literally physically, energetic, like it's such an intelligent system. I mean, just like it is built for these energetic, divine communication pathways. It's just mind blowing, but what a beautiful depiction you had. And then the last thing is, as we're in alignment and our rabbit ears come into alignment and our signal is strong, then the picture on the screen, what you're projecting to the world, is crystal clear you, just like Zach just said. So then when you're in community and it's reflected back, it's the feeling of being seen, just really being seen. And we've had this experience before. It is so profound, and it's what caused my brother to be vibrating with such great love, because he felt so seen by his partner. And that's our natural state, it's just, so all of this wisdom that you just shared and the capability of our human bodies, like to set us up, and then the wisdom and the teachings to how to tune in, how to get silent, how to align our system so that we can be in direct communication to our soul, higher self, God, whatever you want to say, is just miraculous. So it's so beautiful to be here today. And I hope this resonated with all of you. It's
so good to be together. We want to bring the community into the discussion as well. There's Q&A you can type in at the bottom. There's a way to upvote some of the questions too there in the Q&A if you want to double click that. You can try upvoting there if the option is there apparent there for you. And we'll click through these. Unfortunately, our team here has been kind of trying to narrow down kind of how we can be most efficient at answering a wide spectrum of these kind of in one thing. So I'm going to try this one here. Question here: how do you manage right brain from left brain thinking? For example, we have a vision, but need to also be business people to realize our vision. And so that's a great thing there. I think it's maybe the same question here, commenting on biologic benefit of connecting in community, but let's go ahead and do that left brain, right brain thing, like vision versus doing. Is there something that you've come up with that's working for you?
You go first.
Right. So this is something that we've worked really hard at Seraphic Group, which is the parent company that I started that helps run a bunch of our subsidiaries. But our leadership there has been very curious to know, how do we set a community in motion through a corporation that is in freedom to be in alignment with self at the individual level, and then ultimately free to find its its highest spiritual calling as a group of people, as a corporation, as it is. And one of the things that have really come to light through a number of different channels is that there is a duality that exists between the infinite and the finite. And this really describes the human experience itself. We have an infinite energy center within us. If you've ever seen somebody pass away and you've been at their bedside or holding their hand when they take that last breath, when that energy center leaves the body, you know it immediately. And the doctor gets called in 15 minutes later, whatever, to pronounce the death or whatever it is. But everybody in the room felt it happen. Everybody knew. There was no question, no matter if they've never seen a medical situation or, or 40-year nurse in the ICU. That moment is so palpable when that infinite thing leaves this finite body. And so to be human is to hold the duality of an infinite being, whether you call it a soul or just an energetic space. There's an infinite energy within you that is come into alignment for a moment to manifest or animate a very finite structure of a human body. And I think that's worthwhile thinking about when we start to think about vision versus, what I would say more operational execution, right? And so what does vision versus operation look like in your life as a business person, is the question I ask. I think it's to wake up in the morning and immediately connect to the infinite, bring yourself into the silence, and make sure all day as you start to execute the finite journeys that are going to be the things that might on one level define your day, whether it be responding to your emails or getting to the meetings or picking up the stuff at the dry cleaners or whatever it is that we have to do in that day. That journey is really a series of finite things that are not the point. The point is the place you began in the morning, which was the infinite connection. And so learning to live a lifestyle where that infinite reconnect happens all the time has become one of my superpowers. And it's the thing that I'm most grateful for when I go to sleep on the pillow at night and still feel like a child. I'm so grateful because I always used to be able to connect to that 5-year-old within me when I woke up on the pillow in the morning. But it's only in these last few months of my life where I'm starting to realize I'm still that 5-year kid at the end of the day. It gives me the sense of I think I won the game today. I think I stayed connected to the infinite, and I allowed the finite events not to never eclipse the infinite within me. And so the finite will happen, but the infinite needs to be the resonance chamber for the finite events to occur. And so it's not to discount the importance of the finite journeys that you do, the people that you connect with in the meeting or whatever. But if you show up in your infinite state, the efficiency of that meeting is going to be radically different. The efficiency of your capacity to communicate clearly, to see clearly, to discern in those moments will be radically different.
Yes, I agree.
All right.
I could expand on that, but I feel like we got to get to other questions. I don't know.
Well,
Kind of
tackle this one. Can you comment on the benefit of connecting in community? What is happening at the cellular level when 2 or more souls are resonating together?
Oh, if that's a cellular question, I feel like you should answer it. But I feel like we've, energetically, it's that magnetic field where 2 or more are gathered.
Mm-hmm.
You're creating a field of coherence that then becomes, puts you in, when you're in coherence, you're in that, you're open to signs, to communication, to guidance from whomever that may be, God, your soul, just the intelligence of nature, so I think that it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I always say where 2 or more are gathered, there's such wisdom in that, because you're rounding out the field,
Mm-hmm.
And that's, they've done so many studies on group meditation and group intention, and Lynn McTaggart does a lot of research around this, and you can literally measure the changes in the field across the globe when a group of people are all getting silent in a state of coherence together, sending with the intention in their mind about this one place or person, and there is a actual effect that happens across the globe. So again, we're all connected by this field, and we need community in order to help our magnetic field expand and our energy come up. And then we, high tide lifts all boats. We can create magnetic field changes and significant changes in the world through intention.
So well described. I love that. the if you need a visual on that, because I love that, because you can already feel that, right? When Kelly's describing that experience of that magnetic energy and all of that, you know what it feels like when you walk into a room and you see somebody that you didn't expect to see, that's an old friend or somebody you totally resonate with, and that spark happens. It happened to me recently. I got on a plane, and the last two people I expected there were sitting together a few rows back, and I literally froze, because I was trying to figure out if my brain was tricking me or not, because I was like, this doesn't compute. I knew these people were supposed to be somewhere else this weekend. And I was like, so my rational brain was like, this is physically impossible. This is happening. But my body was just exploding with joy while my brain was paralyzed, because I was in resonance with two of my favorite people on the planet before I could even move my body to rush over and grab both of them and hug on them. That magnetism is so palpable for all of us. But if you want to kind of put a deeper vision on it, it turns out that a black hole in the center of the universe, or universe being a black hole at its limits, but then each galaxy having a black hole that then creates the event horizon, which is that spiral of stars and that light energy, and the black hole within every single proton, within every single atom, within the billions of atoms, within every molecule or cell. You start adding this up, and it just gets bonkers amount of black holes everywhere. And these black holes are just gravitational centers. And a black hole, it turns out, needs two bodies. And so there's a tetrahedron creates a perfect sphere of magnetic field. And so it's a great resonance, and one of the most stable structures in all of nature is a tetrahedron. But to create a black hole, which is the ultimate in bringing light energy for maximizing co-creativity, it takes two tetrahedrons. And so these two bodies with perfect spherical energy fields have to press themselves together against the forces that are there. And so it's like pushing two magnets together. But as you push and push, they suddenly will lock into place, where those spheres are now a little more similar to donuts. And you've got these two donuts that are pushed together. And what immediately happens, their spins go the opposite direction. And so the spin of energy, the light energy being attracted into this now duality of two tetrahedrons, is creating a black hole, and it's attracting infinite more energy than the one sphere could have, because it's got this double torus action on it. And so what you're really doing when you come in touch with somebody else and you put those heart centers together in a big hug, hold for 30 seconds in that hug, because you're creating a double torus. You're both starting to spin the opposite directions of each other so that you can see as much of each other as possible, as fast as possible. So the electrons are rushing past each other at infinite speeds, beyond light speed, because they're in this quantum state of reality, of blinking in and out of reality every millionth of a second. And so there's so much information transfer that happens when you bring two forces together. And in that infinite expansion of information, you become a creative force as a community, as two people or three people, or as you say, you get thousands of people that are bringing their energy fields together, and you create hundreds or thousands of black holes. And that black hole energy is this acceleration of knowingness. I love that idea that when you hear me, or you hear Kelly on her podcast, or you listen to one of the scientists on Heal, or you go on the Journey of Intrinsic Health and you're inspired by something like that, what you're going to find out is that you are literally just becoming a clearer energy field. And when you come into alignment with your coach or another individual on the other side of that, week of digesting all of that information, you are magnified immediately, because that other energy field is coming in, and it's making you much more effective, becoming that creative force that you really would love to be in this tipping point of all things. And so we're excited to be engaged with you all. We got a couple more questions here, but before I drop off and look down at more questions, do you want to catch us up on how other ways to engage with Heal community or anything like that, websites or anything like that to connect to?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty active on Instagram, so at Heal Documentary, or you can go to healdocumentary.com, and we've got extra resources there, links to all the experts. I think we've got a sale on our swag right now.
Sweet. Heal swag.
It's very funny.
I like it.
But yeah, I want to speak a little bit about your course that you've created, because it's such a beautiful gift and offering. But I don't know if you want to do one more question, or I can speak to it.
We'll grab one more question here. I think this one feels pertinent. because of the condition of society right now, but how can we begin to heal or come into alignment without outside help? And how can we start to move and keep checking ourselves to keep ourselves in alignment? So it's a challenging question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the silence is the best way, and reconnection with nature. You know, our ancestors slept on the ground. They didn't have smartphones to distract them, you know, negative news streams coming at them, and this overwhelming abundance of information that we're, you know, bombarded with every day. So I really think the first step is, if you are isolated, or if you don't feel you don't have the means to work with someone right now, or whatever it is that, you know, feels you need to do a work with yourself to tap into your own healing. I think turning within and the silence, and finding some practice of reconnecting to that inner voice. And I think reconnecting with nature is a big part of it. I mean, of course, there's so many free resources of meditation online, but if you're, you know, some people need meditation in a different way, like Zach said, and connecting with nature, putting your bare feet in the ground, going for a hike at sunrise, sunset, and just really taking in the expanse and the beauty and the organization and the perfect order and all of the chaos. I mean, nature is geometrically perfect, you know, down to the cellular level that Zach was talking about. And it's really beautiful to take that in, and that elicits wonder and awe and all sorts of positive chemistry in the body. And then the more you tap into that silence, the more you quiet the mind and turn within, you know, whichever your practice is, the more you're going to align that antenna and get the guidance you need, or attract the right person that will help you in the way that you need to be helped.
Love that.
If that makes
It's
sense.
beautiful. One thing I was thinking of when you were speaking there is, you know, the concept of aloneness is very, you know, human ego belief system, right? Because you're actually never alone, which is very exciting. The only place you can be alone is in your own head, but you are always together with, you know, your soul, certainly, but nature and every, you know, the beauty of the entire cosmos is always with you. And so it's only the human mind that could convince us that we are alone, and we do it every day. We all say that at some point in the day of, man, I feel lonely, or I feel like I'm unseen, or I feel this or that. It's because we're not seeing ourselves in that moment as much as other people not seeing us. And if we're not seeing ourselves, then how can we blame anybody else for not seeing us? Because we're not projecting that perfect, you know, soul from us, because we're not in alignment with self. And so that silence is such a powerful thing, because it should be an immediate response or reminder to you that there's this huge other entity within you, this deep wisdom and knowingness within you that's ready to speak to you immediately, and is actually already always talking to you. You're just not listening because your other five senses are so distracting you, and society is so eager to get you distracted. You're never alone. You're always with you, and you is much deeper than the human experience. There's an infinite you. There's that ancient you that has all knowingness, all wisdom within it. And that's what you're going to find when you go into that silence that Kelly's talking about there. So shake off the alone state, just shake it off, jump up and down, shake off any beliefs of alone. It doesn't happen. It's not possible, not physically possible, not spiritually possible. You're never alone, but you can create that prison within your own mind. So if you're stuck there, unlock that, dive into the silence, get connected. One other last question kind of related there is, you know, as we imagine this future connectivity, there's a specific question around mothers. Is there an opportunity for maybe not even beyond mothers of human children, but that nurturing kind of creative force within the feminine archetype? How do we tap into that? Have you seen anything out there that gets you excited about that feminine archetype and its rise?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, you know, we create life within our bodies. Of the, you know, it's the story's been that the men are the powerful ones, and the strong ones, and but I think now we're seeing, you know, and it doesn't need to be an aggressive feminism, it's a rebalancing, you know, that's been out of balance for so long, for many different reasons. But for me, it is I'm coming to realize that we have this inherent like primal power within us. We birth life. We are a portal of life. And I mean, like, and I learned this through having a child. And my intention was to have an unmedicated birth. And I was able to do it by just saying, dude, women have been doing this for thousands of years. And you know, and I was open to whatever was meant to happen, but I had the experience, and it's just like, it's you, your mind is blown. I mean, you're not even there. You're between two worlds. So it's just, I'm seeing a lot more of this, that, you know, it's been lopsided for a long time, which is why I believe that these institutions of society are no longer working, because imbalance catches up and it's dis-ease. And I think the feminine wing, or the feminine, is rising to meet and balance and bring that nurturing, mothering, compassionate element to, you know, community and societies to correct what's no longer serving us and no longer working.
It's beautiful. And for all the men, and for all of us who kind of fall into that masculine archetype often of the doingness, it's a cool reminder for us to become, you know, more tapped into that creative force. I loved what I felt every time you did this kind of portal experience here. I was like, oh my gosh, the vibrations coming out of that knowingness. And so I have that womb within me too. And I have this creative force that is an ancient wisdom, what call it a soul, that's shining through me and into my pelvis. And from there, I birth this experience of this is me out to the world. And so you are a portal for the infinite, whether you be in the masculine or feminine state, from a gender standpoint, from a sexual standpoint. We are all generative machines of creativity. And it's not until we find balance between those two energies, masculine and feminine, within every architecture within the body, within the spiritual realm, within the physical realm, within the psychological realm, and beyond, that we really become our truest, most powerful manifestors of the future that we all want to see. And so come into that alignment. We're going to wrap it up here, but do you want to say any last words there?
Yeah, I just want to, you know, I encourage, I just am so grateful that you put together this journey of intrinsic health, because healing is so overwhelming for people, and it is truly holistic. There's no one size fits all model for healing. So what you've created and what you're offering, and you're offering these coaches and community experience as you go on this journey, is really just the education and reconnection to oneself, to find that balance within and see what's in their environment, inner and outer, that's out of balance, so that they can come back into balance. And, you know, we all have the masculine and feminine within us. So it's really just, it's a beautiful spiritual, biochemical, just physical experience. And it's such a gift, because you're so articulate, and your wisdom comes from so many backgrounds, and to put them in a course for people to take. And it's an investment, but it's got to be the best investment you can make for yourself, because it will literally reconnect you with your soul and just align your antennas so you can be seen. And in that experience, healing happens.
It's a powerful thing. And I think that's what we got excited about in the clinic over the years. Is I was started as, you know, so focused on cancer and, you know, endocrine disorders and all that. But as we started to lose the disease modality of understanding why I was there, and started becoming a healer instead of a doctor, it was a potent change in the environment. As a doctor, you need people to be sick around you to justify your identity, to justify your doingness. And so I kept my patients locked in disease for decades in academia, because my self-worth was that I could make their blood sugars better. Well, that is really ridiculous, because I'm only with them every 3 months in clinic or whatever, and their blood sugars would get worse every time they weren't around me, which subconsciously was reinforcing the importance of me. And so in a weird way, we get locked into these codependent relationships with disease manifestation or disease-centric healthcare systems that are reinforcing the need for us to be sick. As patients, we don't think we'll be seen if we're not sick. We can't show up at a doctor's office feeling great, because they're going to ignore us. Like, why would they want to see us? We can't even go to the doctors. So nobody's going to see you and see your vitality unless you're sick. And then the doctor's going to look at you and say, well, unless you're sick, I don't have a role, and so I need you to be sick. And so there's this bizarre low energy state. And as we started to peel that back as practitioners at our clinic over the last 10 years, realized I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I want to be like, I don't know, freaking health nut. I tried for a while, but then the health nut thing becomes a religion and all that. And in the end, I found out I just want to be freaking me. I want to show up in clinic as a 5-year-old kid, really curious and excited to find out what soul walks in next. Be like, why are you here? Welcome to the tipping point of humanity. We are literally melting inside the cocoon. What part of the butterfly do you want to be? And so this is the energy that I think I want to bring to everybody now. And now you get to be engaged with me because you want to be a butterfly, not because you have cancer or you have autoimmune disease. And so Journey of Intrinsic Health for me was a freeing of my own self-identity. I think I was the first person healed through that journey, and getting to engage with people and walk that out really relies on that coach's reflection. And so the reason for the extent of the program, 8 weeks, and it is an investment, and that investment is really going to pay for the hours of time that your coach is putting into being a perfect mirror to your journey. Because until you really find out what part of the butterfly you're here to be, you're going to have friction. You're going to feel like you're being pulled apart, which is going to cause chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, sleep disorder, sexual dysfunction. It's going to go, all of that is because you are at odds with that deep alignment that Kelly is so potently showing us what it feels like to be woman. And so I want to be in that alignment with you, and our teams are always ready to jump in with you at journeyofintrinsich.health.com. But we're excited for you to be a part of that community, because we just launched an app with it, which keeps our people connected after the 8 weeks. And once you find a bunch of people that are aligned, have found themselves and are starting to speak their truth, and you put them in community, I believe we're going to see companies born. We're going to see all kinds of things birthed out of that space, because all of the black holes that are setting themselves in alignment with the geometry of the universe, because we're here to birth a new world. We're very excited to have you part of that for Journey of Intrinsic Health. And this is a little bit of our first effort here to join forces with Kelly and the HEAL community, because we know that there's entry points to information that the documentary world has allowed for us to engage in. There's podcasts that can give further depth and that listening for truth within the words and between the words of long form conversation. But to get you engaged, we're looking for new avenues to create and unleash the creative capacity within you. So we're excited to bring Journey alongside of HEAL to see what we can do to accelerate all of you into the transformative beings that you really showed up here to be. And it gives me great joy to be in a double tetrahedron experience with you, Kelly, for this last hour.
Electrons are going the other way. Yeah, Kelly G. Use code Kelly G at checkout. Journey of Intrinsic Health. Is that right?
Kelly G is your checkout code for Journey of Intrinsic Health. And you're going to find your way through that website. And we're excited to be engaged with Kelly, and your leadership for this community has been very much appreciated. And we're excited for the community to give you permission to glow brighter and for them to look through you instead of at you and see all of that beauty within.
I'm blushing. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And again, thank you for all you're creating to help heal humanity.
Glad to be here.
Bye, guys.